Hey everyone, welcome back to the Goldbrand channel. This week we have a Kratos, the God of War from Wicked 3D. You can find their stuff on Patreon or Cults 3D, and we got a bit over 1/6 scale today, kind of a 1/6 scaled up 15%, I believe, additional. So not quite 1/6, not quite quarter scale, somewhere in between. But huge model, huge base. The base is a little too big for my liking, but yeah. Anyway, this video is not sponsored, and please enjoy the painting. Alrighty, so again, the base, humongous, whatever, is what it is. So basically we got a metallic band, I think it's supposed to be bronze or something, going around the entire thing. It was split in 4 parts, as you can see. Now I did scale this up from their stated 1/6 scale to, I think it was about 130% upsized. So it's not quite quarter scale, it's maybe like 1/5. So he's pretty big, but not as big as what I would have wanted it. But again, look how big the base is. Huge. Obviously, wide stance, he's got his feet separated. So a big reason for choosing this model in particular is last time I did jungle theme with the Lara Croft. This time I have a lot of snow effects I want to use, especially on this base. Now we got rocks, very nice textured by the way. Pretty much scattered all around, but all this texture on top, this is supposed to be snow. And what I have to use for that to achieve a snowy look is this AK Interactive snow effects, and it's essentially exactly what it sounds like. It's like fluffy type of snow clay stuff. I've never used it before, I just tried it out the other day. I have some ice sparkles. This is quite literally just really fine, glassy looking sand. The idea is you put that on the top of the snow effects and it would make it have that sparkle like fresh snow. And then I also have Technical Blizzard. I'm pretty sure this is just the same as the other stuff. It's a snowy, fluffy texture thing. And then I've got numerous liquid frost effects. Again, I never used any of these types of things. Also, I went out and bought this specifically. Gamer Grass, very cool brand, very expensive grass though, just keep that in mind. This is not a snowy plant, I don't think, but I just got it because it's white. So I'm going to be putting these all over the model. And what I've done here off camera is just a white ink, kind of like a Xanathol, just getting all the snow parts lightened up and white. And then I blacked out the rocks again. And then just going straight into a makeup style brush to stipple onto these rocks, just to add a little bit of pre-depth onto them before we get to the dry brushing. And just adding a little bit of color variation here, I'm using this desert yellow. Now there's no particular logic I'm following with these colors in particular, it's just to add a little bit of varying surface color to the rocks. Again, still just stippling on, so that's like little stabby motions. Not quite dry brushing just yet, that'll be very soon. And here comes the first color for the dry brushing, and it's just a grey. You can use a million kinds of grey for this. This is just the one I'm choosing to go with. And this makeup brush just makes it real easy to just glide over. You can use all kinds of different brushes. I'm just using this one because it's big. You can use regular dry brushes or, just flat-headed brushes, but big areas like this, if you got a big brush on hand, may as well put it to use. Now I'm just loading up the bronze from Pro Acryl metallic range here. I'm just blasting that around the ring at the bottom. It could have been silver, could have been gold. I just chose bronze because I love the way this bronze in particular looks, and that's all I did for that step. And when it comes to these little grass tufts, again, not too much like thought out logic here, just kind of going for cracks and crevices just to fill up empty space, give the eye a little bit of intrigue on where to look. So not stressing too much, kind of just like thinking to yourself, the grass isn't just going to grow out of a random flat piece of the rock, so you know, in little cracks and stuff you could more logically follow grass sprouting from those areas. So that's kind of the logic I'm using. And then using brown for this tree, I'm just stippling that on as well. And then using another brown, I blast it over the entire area. And this just sets me up for a good base for the tree colors. And I can just follow up with a dry brush, and that makes for a very simple and easy tree formula. Now I believe I followed up with another color after this, but this was fine as is because I'm going to cover it in snow anyways. Now, on the topic of this snow, this stuff is like, I don't know if you've ever used it before, but like roofing plaster for like plasterboard. Very odd using it for the first time. So basically I tried smearing it all over like you see on the screen now. And then you're kind of left with the problem, well, it doesn't look like snow, it looks like I just smeared a bunch of cream all over it. And the way I actually fixed that was using a makeup brush. I kind of smoothed it over like you're seeing now, but then the real killer was using a fatter, like rounded makeup brush and just dotting that down and flattening it. And that got me a lot closer to where I wanted to be and the effect I was after. I repeat the same thing for the trees and for the gravestone rune things later on in the video, but yeah, I got the hang of it by the end of just plomping a huge amount on there, smoothing it out a little bit, and then just using that fatter brush to just plump it down. Next, for these rune stones, anything going over black, that's going to be like a bright color. You should whiten it first. That's why I'm going in with white. And I'm not too worried about over, brushing or getting it everywhere, because I got a really easy method to clean that up. I'll show you in just a second. And using the fluoro blue to blast it in there as well, just to give it that bright highlight, really makes for a difference. And then again, that brush coming in clutch, just dabbing it on gently. That way it only hits the risen areas, and look at that. Perfectly cut lines, no overpainting to be seen. And then finishing off the gravestones, a dry brush of a dark grey, bluish type of colour. And here you see me doing that patting motion with the sponge to really get that nice padded snow look, so it doesn't just look like you've shoved cream all over it. This really saved the way the snow effects looked. If there's any other methods out there that are better, I'm sure there is. This is just the one I did because I'd never used it before, and that's just what I found to work. So onto the shoes, starting with this brown. And I forgot to record this bit, but I did these straps in this red brown tone, dark flesh tone. Very nice. And then moved on to the one little yellowish piece just below where his kneecap is. This is the only piece in this color on his shoes. But I'm doing multiple layers of these. I'm just not showing them just to kind of save time. Because I've got like 100 plus 200 whatever clips here, and I don't need to make this video hours long for redundancy purposes. Now, using this brown, I've been trying to experiment a little bit with using other methods of dry brushing, like using the sponge to just stab the color on like this. It's not quite the effect I like in particular, so probably going to stick to brushes for the most part. And then using this dark red, I love this red, I use it all the time. And you'll notice I use it a lot on this model, so I'm not going to show the bottle every time I use it. That's same with a lot of the leather colors on this model. And yeah, so if you don't see me show the bottle every time, it's probably because it's a color I've used multiple times already. And just for the metals, I'm just going to jot those on, completely covering it. Should only take, if it's over black, one good coat, but sometimes if it's like a fancier color like gold, you might need multiple. Now, I use this wash on a lot of stuff on this model, and basically I'm putting all the colors down as you've seen, and then just completely covering it, completely dabbing off all the excess. I'll use a paper towel, but then I'll migrate to the sponge to get a more thorough job done, and it just weathers it down beautifully. And on to the pants, this Necromancer cloak, it's not going to show well at all on camera, that's why I sped through it so quickly, but it is a very faint bluish look afterwards. And then I'm just dry brushing to further increase that contrast now. Onto this charred brown, just completely blocking out a lot of the leather on this, I'm not sure what you would call it, groin guard, whatever. Trying to avoid parts that I don't want to hit, even though I'm going to like cover it with metal and the brown's not going to matter too much. It's always just good to practice being neat when you can, even if it doesn't matter, just to keep your dexterity up. Almost always when it comes to leather, I'm going to be dry brushing one or two other colors, just going brighter from where I started. And that's a really simple and easy way to think about weathering your leather to make it pop a bit more. You can go more in depth with it, especially adding things like washes and stuff, but for the most part, just one or two even little dry brushes, and that'll really bring it out a bit more. And I kind of wish I blasted a different metal color here, because it's really not that, shiny, but oh well. Now back to this Nocturnal Red again, just putting a first initial color down on all of these strap things that dangle all the way down. Further on in the video, I won't actually show it, but I will do dry brush a brighter color onto these, just a little faint one, and then I wash them down. Now this hemp rope I got specifically just for like ropey bits like this, and it's actually perfectly suited for the task. Just that right color of dirty yellow for little ropes and ties and things. Now again, using familiar browns, just going over the same bits of leather. There's a lot of leather on this model, and you can feel necessary to add every tone imaginable, just to completely differentiate everything. But you can't get too crazy with it, otherwise it's just going to be an explosion of colors when it's supposed to be dirty leather, and you can't push that in too many different directions. Now here's one of the many parts that I forgot to record or got jumbled up in the process. This horn I just hit with a off-white, any one of your choice, it doesn't matter, and then just covered it with a brown, and then dried most of that off just to give it that worn, dirty, horn look, I suppose. And then onto these things on his belt. I'm not sure if these were supposed to be rocks or steel, but I interpreted it as steel, and so I'm going with a steel color. And the rings around his belt, I'm opting for bronze. Again, you can choose whatever color you want for these types of things. I don't like to push the colors too crazy, but when medals and buckles and straps and things are involved, I like to just change them a little bit. but not so stark and so different that it creates a mess for the eyes, I suppose. Now, practicing what we did on those runes earlier, I'm going to be blasting this axe, just not regarding overspray at all, because we're going to use that sponge method to get that perfect recess effect like we did earlier. Now, I'm pushing the blues a little bit more with this speed paint here, an express paint it's called, and as you can see, just completely overbrushing it, not caring too much about getting it in places it's not meant to be, because we're going to fix it. And back with the matte black and the sponge, going to be patting that all away now. Now these lines are super thin and super shallow. You've got to be really careful and make sure your sponge is really dry when you're patting it. And don't ever drag the sponge. You've got to make sure it's a tap, a little dab. Otherwise you will fill in those blue lines. Doing the same thing with this chainmail to add the first layer of the metal. Now I'm not doing a complete coverage. I'm leaving little bits of black in the background here. And that's just to add a bit of variance to the steel, because steel's always variable. And then I'll be using this silver, just a plain silver. I'm just dabbing that on the ends of the axe just to give it a bit of variance, like the worn edge that's been cutting things, and on the back a little bit as well. And that just adds another layer of realism. Now there's a lot to this axe head, and I tried to follow it as closely as I could as far as the references went. And I'm pretty sure I got practically all of it, reasonably accurate. It's with these fancier metal colors that you may have to go back with multiple coats, but over pure black it does usually go down pretty well in one coat. The bronze is much the same. I think the bronze goes down a lot better than the gold. The gold can be a bit finicky sometimes, but most of these metals I'm using from Pro Acryl. You can use other ones, they work pretty well just as well. I just really like the Pro Acryl and I had them on hand, so that's why I used them. Back to the Nocturnal Red, I'm just blasting this over the handle after I fully cover up the head of the axe so I don't undo any of my progress. And that's going to serve as the base colour for my wood. The references have a very red tinted wood, so that's why I'm sticking with that colour, and I'm just going to be doing a dry brush of this scrag brown. Now moving on to his satchel and little baggie here, I'm starting off with these browns and I'm stippling them on, not dry brushing straight away. So just stabbing the colours deep in there. I want to add a few different variants here. And I also don't want the satchel and the bag here to be the same material, because a bag and a satchel isn't going to be the same, if you know what I mean. So I'm starting off with different colors underneath, and then we'll be heading to the booth and spraying a different shade over it. Now I've got this really watered down beastie brown here, and I'm just kind of loosely blasting that over all the surface, and you can still see those tones underneath that was left. And I'm using two different tones because, again, I want to keep those colors looking different. I want the sack to look more like a sack, and I want the satchel to look like more leathery, and so that's why we kept those colors a bit different. Back onto the wash again once everything's dried. I'm putting that over the satchel and the sack and just fully drenching them up, letting them soak and taking off any excess, and then hitting the stitchings with the dark red again. And I'm just hitting that big button medallion thing in the middle again with the bronze, because just a lovely colour and I think it works well. And I'll typically hit it with a wash also, the button on its own. Now these rubbin buffs are they're in a metallic meant to be applied via a rub. So that's why I have it on a Q-tip here, and just through the trimmings on this bag, going through and just rubbing it on the individual lines. Now this is easy, but you need to take your time doing it. You don't want to rush and get that gold off the trimmings and on the bag. It'll ruin the whole look of the thing. Now I didn't do a perfect job here, but pretty good enough that it looks convincing. Now starting off, we're doing a zenithal on the skin tones for Kratos. Now skin tones were one of the things I'm a little bit unhappy with how I came out at the end, and I have to apologise for the footage of all the spray booth you're going to see. I don't have a good setup to visualise what's kind of going on in the spray booth. I'm trying to figure that out still, but bear with me. So started off with the zenithal, then the pinkish type of hued undertone of the skin, blasted that over everything. And then I've got a couple different colours that I'm shooting through the gun at super low pressure, so it's just shooting dots rather than an actual spray. And I'm starting off with a blue clear, and this is going to be from Tamiya. And then I'm following it up with a yellow clear, and then there'll be a red clear and a green clear. And I apologise if you can't see the difference as I'm shooting it, as these are tiny little dots and they're clear paints, so they're not as visible through my phone camera lens as they are in real life. But in the future shots, you'll see up close those tiny little dots. And the purpose of this is to try and set up some sort of grainy skin tone, like beneath the skin, to add some realism. I haven't tried this before. This is like a new thing, and this was my first attempt, and I think it worked out pretty good. Using this watercolor pencil, I'll be just outlining all the veins on his arm. Now I don't want to get super bright veins. I'm not pushing down on the pencil really hard. I'm just kind of lightly drifting over every vein, because I want them to shine through a little bit, but I don't want them to be too prominent. Now again, I'm just making the skin tone up as I go. As you know, he's got white skin, but you can't just shoot white and call it a day. So I'm doing this deck tan in a very watered down fashion. Just putting that over the entire skin surface. I'm doing the same with his knuckles as well, but I'm just not showing that because it's the same thing as his torso. And just lightly spraying that over everything. And assessing, as you can see, he's still got all that pigmentation in there that you can see, which is what I want to keep, so that's going to be all the detail. Now in hindsight, I did end up making him too red. After I do this white ink, I should have left a lot of that whiteness on him. It would have kept true to what his actual colours were. But finished product in person, he's quite pink, too much so, but you live and you learn. Can't do much about it. It's at this stage I start the 3 skin wash method, and that's why I'm going to be using the Tamiya, the same paints I used to do the spots all over his skin. They're all Tamiya and they're all clear. So starting with a clear yellow, very watered down, into a big little cup there, as you can see, coating the entire area and then dabbing all of it off. There should be hardly any visible difference after you're done. The red one is going to be the most notable and make the most life come out of the model after the fact. Because after you've sprayed multiple times, they can seem really flat, like the skin tones that you've done. And then this 3 skin wash routine is to help bring back some of that color and that life. And I feel the red one is the most important, but it can also be the most detrimental. And in my case, I ended up going back in and adding more red after this filming, and it was too much. I overdid it. Now, specifically after that red wash, before it's dried, immediately after, you can spritz alcohol on the model. And that's supposed to separate the paint cells, kind of like a blood cell type effect, where the paint will separate and join together in strange ways, and it just makes for a more realistic skin tone. Now, it's kind of hard to see, especially on camera, and even in real life, you hold it up close, it can be really hard to notice sometimes, but it's just one of those things that adds another layer. Now, this blue wash is the last of the 3 skin wash, and this is of utmost importance to make sure this paint is thin, because if this has got too much paint in it and not enough water, you will stain the model in a way that cannot be fixed. It's just going to have this real murky blue look to it. Now, this is the point I went back with the red wash, and I just kept attacking certain areas with very, very thinned down red wash. Super thin. In fact, you won't notice a difference as I paint it. It's only after, your 100th stroke that you start to really notice that difference. And I don't regret doing this, I just regret doing it as much as I did in certain areas. But you kind of have to make the judgment call yourself as you do it. Now, for the markings on his body, I'm using this gory red, and I masked the area out by hand using putty and masking tape. And it didn't come out, I didn't mask it the straightest in the world. I think the little swirly bit on his shoulder is the only part that I'm really annoyed by. But all in all, it was pretty good. In hindsight, I probably wouldn't have sprayed. I probably would have dabbed, like stippled the red on to give it a more realistic old tattoo look. Because of this, once you see me peel it off here, you'll see it actually looks really bright, and it's in great contrast to his old weathered skin. So it's a little bit too bright, if you get what I'm saying. Now, I probably would have changed what colour I used for his mouth come the end of the day. I do end up putting multiple different colours on his tongue off screen after this. But this was just the base, and it's a fine base, but the colours I chose to put down afterwards were a little bit silly. This Caribou Crimson, very thin down, makes for excellent scar type of outline. So that scar in his eye, you just go over it multiple times until you get the colour you want. I probably did it too many times. I could have made it a bit more faded, but it was fine in the end. And for his beard, I completely blacked it out and then started attacking it with a watered down brown to try and make it look like, like a variable beard colour where he's got black here and brown there. You can see just again hitting so much of the model with the same 2, 3, 4 different browns and reds as earlier on in the model. It can seem boring when you're doing the same color over and over again, but it's important not to stray too far from the scheme that you're attacking. I'm using that chainmail again for the what I think to be metal armor pieces all over him. Now, after I've washed these metal pieces down, I'm actually going in with a brighter color, which is just silver. I'm just hitting the tops of that like a dry brush all over those pieces. And that contrast of the brighter silver on top with the darker silver underneath just makes the metal look a lot more believable. Using the rub and buff again, I'm going over the trims on the metal pieces again. This is just creative choice. I've got no idea what this is supposed to be, but I just chose to make the tips of them gold. Moving on to eyes, these are incredibly hard to film and like trying to do properly as well, so forgive me for skipping or cheaping out on certain parts. But basically, for the white of the eyes, you want to use a off-white. Very important that it's off-white. And moving on, I have the nicest brush I have, which is one of these Winsor & Newtons. I pretty much exclusively use this for the eyes of my models. And I'll use this now to pretty much block out the pupil, just getting the pupil and the iris blocked out in black, and then we'll build our color over those pupils. Now I add a white inside the black part that I just did, but you don't need to do that. That was just me kind of falling back on old habits. Starting off, we got a dark green. Always starting with the darkest color leading up to your brightest. Now completely filling out that inside of the pupil, leaving a very small black outline where the color is. Very important. That's going to serve as the rim of the iris. And then going up to your brighter colors. Now for this one, I kind of wanted to put the, like kind of fade the brighter color from the side over. And just using a toothpick, I have a white here. And for this specular highlight, I already put the pupils in. I could not film it and, you know, accurately do the pupils at the same time, so I did it off camera. Just dabbing the specular highlight on to the side of the eye, just off the iris, definitely not covering up the pupil. And that makes for the eyes complete. And then topping it off with multiple layers of gloss, making sure each row gets completely dry before the next, and not wiping the paint on, more so dabbing it on. Now, big thing when you're doing teeth is to make sure above all else that you leave a small gap in between each tooth. because that little gap is what makes the teeth stand out. If you just slap paint over it, it looks like they have one big tooth, and it's very cartoonish. When you're trying to do a realistic kind of piece like this, you don't want cartoon looking teeth. This oil that I'm putting over the metals here is a panel line wash. It's oil based and very strong, and I put it over most of my metals. And this Magos purple, probably the wrong color in hindsight for the lips. A little too pinkish on this particular model, but I just went with it anyway. Mimir's head, got Athena skin, just that pink under hue as usual. And I will be doing that low air pressure dots all over his face, like I did previously with Kratos' skin, doing the blue, the green, the red, the yellow. I think instead of yellow I switched it out with a brown, and that was a good call because, you know, think on what an old person looks like. They look like a dried up sultana. Their skin complexion's not looking good, so adding as many imperfections under the skin as what is reasonable is a good call. Adds nice amount of, you know, reality to it. It's important to note how incredibly off the cuff any of the decisions I make here are. So these two paints, I'm just kind of showcasing how I mix it together. There was no calculations or forethought. I just got two tones, mixed them together, mostly thinner or water, and then just put it down. Basically the thought process is these old Caucasian skin tones, so putting down a pretty pale looking skin, and then, you know, doing all the work after the fact with the washes to bring the life back in afterwards is the thought process. And again, doing the same one as I did on Kratos. I got the yellow wash here, pushing that all over, dabbing it up, letting it dry, maybe putting a varnish over it, letting it sit, doing the same thing with the red, same thing with the blue. Now I need to mention, this is right at the end of all the footage that I took for this model, so I skip a lot when it comes to Mimir, and my phone started not recording things correctly, so all the horns and the ropes on his head, I lost all that footage, so that's gone. But I also need to mention, around the eyeballs, where the big bags on his eyes are, they are significantly darker now, once the painting's fully done. As you'll see in the reveal footage at the end, his eyes are incredibly dark, the bags under his eyes, and that's because I took that red wash after all this, and I just kept hitting the under of his eyes to really make them red and sore like an old person's would be. And then I tried something new with this oil panel line wash here, and I, just knowing that it's an oil, and I dabbed that under his eyes as well, just to add more of that dead, old, decrepit look, because with those massive eye bags. Just random stuff like this where you get an idea for something that might work, just take it, just take that little leap and see how it goes, because it worked out for me on this. And it should be noted, if you think these eyeballs look silly, I implore you to go look at a reference of what his eyes look like close up. They are impossible, for me anyway, to paint. They are ridiculous. They're like galaxies. So I use a metal and I just do the outline and I call it a day because it's too much for me. And I just completely block out his beard with this grey. I was going to try and do like a bit of a blend, kind of like Kratos's, but I just opted to pretty well completely grey it out. Now the tattoos on his head, I kind of wanted to do something a bit more special than this blue, something a bit more faded, because they are faded, but I just fully painted them on gently, one bit at a time, using the side of my brush. And just blocking in the gauntlets here with the same brown we've been using the whole model. This has to be one of my least favorite parts of the model. I've had to do this on a couple different models, and that's chains tightly wrapped around something that is not chains. This is just a time game. It takes forever to do. There's no way to speed it up. You just gotta knuckle through it. But once you get to the chains that aren't tightly wrapped around something, you can just get a dry brush and blast through it. It's quick as, but God. And for the rest of the colours on the gauntlet, it's pretty much the same stuff you've seen through the rest of the video, just again on his gauntlets. It's only on the other parts of the blade we start doing some new stuff. Now, harken back to the Leviathan axe that we did. We have the blocking out of the magic runes with white again, because we want to make these pop, except on these Chaos blades we actually add a little bit of OSL, or object sourced lighting as it's called, and that's essentially just painting the illusion that there is glow happening from the source of light, which is going to be the swords. Now this reddy orange was a really nice, perfect starting colour. If you can't find this particular one, I'm not entirely sure what you could use. Probably just an orange and mix it with a dab of red. But made for the perfect initial layer to put down before the rest. Back onto a bit more white ink. I'm kind of just fading this around the points that I really want the glow to come from. And the idea of that is anything that has white under it is going to be brighter automatically. So when I shoot the fluoro over these spots, they're going to shine a lot brighter than the other parts. And then back onto the stippling of the black and the steel colors again, kind of like we did with the Leviathan axe. These ones were a lot easier because the grooves are a lot deeper, a lot less room for error. And so stippled with that dark steel again, and then coming back in with some silver just to add variance to the middle of that blade. And here through the airbrush we're adding that fluoro orange and really aiming it at those spots that we highlighted with that white ink earlier. This is really going to push for that glowy magma effect, and I love it. This is the first time I've tried this and it looks awesome. Next I'll be fixing up the edges of the blade just with this chrome. You can use any. I'm on an endless quest to find what the best chrome is. I've got many of them. This is probably the only one that I have that's actually usable without an airbrush though. So, but
I still have many more to try, but this is serviceable. It's visibly much brighter than like silver, for instance. And then using that panel line black wash again, this just really beautifully adds that weather and sense of age to steel. It's really unbeatable in that department. And then just to the cuff of this blade, adding gold all the way around, and multiple coats needed for this. You're probably better off doing 3 if you really want it to pop. I think I just opted for 2. And then light brown around the bottom ring of the sword. Again, this is a very light gold, so you're going to need 2 to 3 coats for it to fully cover properly. And then in the top half, actually, not doing the very bottom hilt, I'm using that black panel line wash again, and that just adds that age and usedness that I'm used to. Now onto some Flesh Tearers Red to put down some blood smears. These are going to be a different color and consistency to this next step, which is blood from the blood gods. This is a technical, and I'm going to be putting this heavily on my brush and then using the airbrush to splatter from the brush onto the blades in a realistic splattery fashion. Beautiful, and just really completes the look. So without further ado, I hope you enjoyed the video and you enjoy this little outro video.